everything I've been through, I've always appreciated, respected time, but it's become a lot more precious to me after my journey. After listening to some of the speakers and their stories, my story is not about addiction, but about battling cancer and the extreme adversity that is. I was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer called acute myeloid leukemia, FLT3, which is another cancer, ITD, which is another bad component. I had to get this cancer, 1/4 of 1% of the population get this. And in a weird way, it's like winning the cancer lottery. Only it's not a lottery you want to win. You have better odds of winning the Ohio lottery than you do that lottery. And with this cancer, it was a long, long journey. And my journey started early March of 2018. It was a bad month for the Reitenauers. I have 2 older sisters, 2 younger brothers, and as Dennis was kind enough to say, we're all pretty good athletes. And my brother played professional baseball in the Tigers organization and played for the Mud Hens. Some of you may have saw him. And he pitched for Milwaukee. And my youngest brother was 6'7", was 48 years old. He played basketball 4 years at the University of Toledo. And before that, he took Whitmer to state semis in basketball. And was sales manager at Brandy's for 25 years. So maybe one of you guys might have bought a car from him. He was sick early March, and we didn't think it was that bad. But all of a sudden, he got sepsis and died suddenly at 48. Well, he wasn't the only one sick that month. I was battling a cold that really wouldn't go away. So I called my doctor and I said, call me in a Z-Pack, a good friend of mine. And he called in and says, if it doesn't work, call me back in about a week, 10 days, we'll do something different. And so I called him back and I said, look, it's not working. He says, I said, call me in something else. He said, no, you gotta come in. And I said, I'm not coming in, it's Friday. And he said, you gotta come in. So you'll be my last appointment. So I went in and he took one look at me and says, you look terrible. You're pale, you got weird bruising on your hands. You need a chest x-ray and blood work. And I said, no, that's not happening. I said, I took my family to a Mexican restaurant, we're having margaritas, boys got their girlfriends. Not happening. And he says, if I gotta walk you down there, you're going. I said, all right. He's Jim, famous last words. He says, it's probably nothing. Don't worry about it. So we went out that evening, had a great time, came back to the house, and we're on the island laughing and talking as usual, and the phone rings. And it's Todd, my doctor. And he says, you can tell him his voice, he's broken. His buddy is bad. Your platelets that are supposed to be around 150,000 to 450,000 to help you clot are 8,000. Don't bump into anything, you'll bleed to death. That's quite a blow. So now I have to go back into the kitchen with all the laughter and tell my family my life's changed forever. So I went to the hospital and it started my journey of battling against this very serious disease. I'd like to take a minute or two to read a little list of everything I've been through so it gives you an idea in overcoming adversity what it faced like. I had 280 hours of chemo, a bone marrow transplant, 3 bouts of GVHD, which means when you get a bone marrow transplant, your old immune system and new immune system, they go to war. And you hope the new immune system wins, but usually it's a battle that your skin and tissue take an extreme beating from. And in my case, the first time I gained 44 pounds of weight in 4 days. I went from 200 almost to 250. All the skin ripped open on the back of my arms, and my feet looked like hamburger for about 2 years with open sores. The second time, with the GVHD. It caused damage to my eyes and basically damaged or destroyed most of the glands in my body. I've had 6 bone marrow biopsies, encephalitis of the brain. My first time with my bone marrow transplant, I rejected it, and I had 104 temperature for 5 days, walking around just babbling incoherently, almost died. 2 occurrences of sepsis, which is a blood infection that's very serious, you can die from. Paralysis from the knee down, you saw me kind of having a tough time coming up here. Chronic muscle fibrosis, which is basically all the tissue, especially in your hips and everything else, dries up and there's no blood flow to it. Damage to my adrenal glands. Damage to tear production, I don't produce tears, so my eyes are permanently damaged. I have 4 eye drops a day. Damage to saliva. Damage to bronchial tubes, 2 back surgeries, wound care for 9 months after the back surgeries. My skin wouldn't heal, so they put a wound vac on there, and then to drain the fluids, hope it heals better, and then they scrape the tissue away every 3 or 4 days for 9 months. 2 heart attacks. Excuse me. Heart failure, liver failure, kidney failure, skin cancer, and 16 injections in each arm to close blisters and wounds from the GVHD. So it's 32 injections once every 6 weeks for 6 months. So that was my journey battling the cancer. And people would ask me, well, how the heck do you get through all that? That's a lot. It's a lot for anybody. And I was never one to quit, and I think athletics helps that. But I had to come up with a plan. I couldn't give into it. So I figured out, as many of you know, I've heard from addiction, is you can't think about too much at one time. You have to go, in my case, I chose to go 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, to get me through. It was way, way, way too much to think about. I couldn't think about anything in the outside world, only what I'm going through. So I was in the hospital for over 250 days in my first 3 years, usually 40 or 50 days at a time, in a room 22 hours in isolation, only with the staff to talk to. So that plays some mental games with you. So in my case, I just decided 1 hour at a time. And my day kind of looked like this. 5:30 in the morning, Isaac would come in. A very kind, large Haitian man with that accent. Good morning, James. And he'd say, are you ready for your blood draw? And he'd always pray with me, and it would start my day great. 6:30, I'd order breakfast. 7:30 would be eat breakfast. 8:30 would be doctors and rounds. 9:30, 10 o'clock, more tests and procedures. 11 o'clock, I'd order lunch. 12 o'clock would be lunch. 1 o'clock, I'd get on my laptop, I'd study my tests from the day, and or look for ways to help cure my very rare cancer. 2 o'clock, I'd take my nap. 4 o'clock, my guests would come in, my friends and family, and I'm here tonight with my lovely wife, Lori, and my son, Corey. And some days I wouldn't feel like company, honestly, and maybe I wasn't the best company, but it was always good having them. 5 o'clock was dinner. 6 o'clock was guests would leave. 7 o'clock was my evening stroll with my IV pole, which I had 5 IVs going in me for over 50 days at a time. I'd walk around with. 8 o'clock, I'd watch TV or listen to music, 8 to 9. 9 o'clock, I tried to get some sleep, but I didn't sleep much. And at midnight, the blood draws would start again every 6 hours. This went on for 50 days. That's a lot. So you try to figure out what is the next step? You know, how do you handle adversity? And all of you guys who've been through this process understand what adversity is like. And you try to take 1 day at a time to overcome that. But while you're in the hospital, dealing with all this stuff and to deal with adversity, you got to have a sense of humor. And I'll tell you a little funny story, what I did to pass my time for my sense of humor. I'd always dress in sweats and my Nike Cortez, which I love, and they'd always want me to wear a gown. And I said, gown is for sick people. It's a mindset. And I said, I knew I was sick, but I wouldn't want to buy into it. I'm going to somehow get better. So 10 o'clock would be time for shower. And what they do is I'd take my shirt off, and I'd have 5 IVs in my arm, and they'd wrap it up with wrap. And I'd go in the shower with one arm dragging my IV pole, and get undressed, get in the shower with one hand, and come out dry. But while I'm in there, they were nice enough to, clean my room, change my linens, and the nursing staff was always just terrific. On this particular day, I had a nurse trainee, and I just get undressed, I just turn the shower on, and I knock on the door. Mr. Reitnauer, can you do this test? I said, well, what test? And she said, well, they really would like this test before you. I said, well, what is it? She said, it's a Cologuard. Many of you guys know what a Cologuard is. And I said, I know what it is. I'll do it. If you don't mind, give it to me. I'll do the test. And what Cologuard basically is, we're all adults here, it's basically a colorectal cancer exam. And it's basically a Q-tip for your butt. You take a little swab of poop, and you put it in a container, and they test it for colorectal cancer. So I did the test, took my shower, came back out, and dressed. And as I came out of the shower, I put it in this little bag, and she's standing there, and my room was clean, and she said, Mr. Reitnauer, how'd it go? I said, everything went fine, except it tasted like shit. Her face went, oh my gosh. She goes running out of the office, and she went to get the head nurse. And I'm trying to keep a straight face. So she comes back walking in, and she says, you got her, didn't you? And I said, yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. I said, but I got to have some fun here. And I guess that kind of goes along with any kind of fight against adversity. You try to take it one day at a time, but you also got to add some humor, and you got to live life. There's another story I'd like to tell, is about all of you taking the time, the judges, the speakers, going the extra effort. I like to think I'm a good judge of character, and I can tell people's hearts, and there's a lot of hearts here tonight. And we're only one conversation away from changing someone's life. That conversation, at the right time, can have an unbelievable effect on somebody's life, and actually have a ripple effect on many lives after that. My recovery, even as you can still see, I'm hopefully going to walk better soon. But 3 years ago, when I was still very large, my wife and I would go out, and my wife is absolutely beautiful, and I looked not so great. And we'd go to the same restaurant, and this woman would come up and she'd say, Jim, you look great. Yeah, you look like you're doing good. Well, I knew I didn't, but I appreciated her kindness. And she was always just very kind and supportive. Well, one day she comes up and she says, didn't look real good. She says, my husband, he got a bad diagnosis. He got abdominal cancer. And she said, would you mind talking to him? And I said, no problem. I'll go talk to him. Her name is Cindy, and her husband's name's Ray. So I went down and sat with Ray, and I said, hey, I heard about your diagnosis. I'm so sorry. What are you going to do about it? And a lot of people who face problems, drug addiction, and in this case cancer, they're in denial. They don't want to face the problems. He goes, Jim, I don't know, probably nothing. Maybe it'll just go away. Or a local doctor says he could just cut it out. And I said, Cindy, do you mind, can I just talk to your husband for a minute by ourselves, men to men? And I know how stubborn us men can be. And I said one more time, I said, what are you going to do? And he said, I don't know, probably nothing. So I was thinking, how do I reach him? How do I reach him? And I said, I got it. I said, you hate your grandchildren. He looked at me shocked. He goes, what? He's got 6 grandchildren he loves. I said, you hate your grandchildren. I said, you're selfish. You're not going to do anything about this cancer. You're not going to do, and you're going to die. I said, you're going to leave those grandchildren without a grandfather. I got him. He started tearing up. I said, buddy, I said, I don't care what you do. So I've learned a lot in my journey. I said, with cancer, and probably addiction too, you get one shot. You get one shot to get this right. You don't get a second shot. And I don't care what you do. I don't care if you go to the James Center Columbus, Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, I've been to all 3. Go to a place with world-class doctors, world-class facilities, world-class treatment. Because you only get one shot at this. So what are you going to do? And he said, all right, yeah, I talked to people, Jake, I'll go there. So his wife came back, and he said he'd go. And fast forward, wonderful outcome. Wonderful outcome. He had robotic surgery. It went about as well as could happen. And he had very little medication with that. And it worked out well. And you think, that's a great story. That's the end of the story. Not quite. So, it was probably about 2 or 3 months later. We saw his wife again, same restaurant. And she comes up and she says, hey, and I counsel cancer patients. I've lost about 40 people over the last 3 years to various cancers. And she goes, would you mind talking to a friend of mine? She just got diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. Doesn't know what she's going to do. And I said, sure, I'll listen. And if I can help in any way, I will. So I went over to talk to her and just kind of getting to know her and try not to be pushy, just listen mostly. And I was just getting to the point where I was telling her how critical getting the best care possible was for her. And Cindy was in earshot. And she goes, wait a minute, you're not going to believe this. I said, what? And she said, well, when she first got diagnosed a few weeks ago, the 4 of us went out to dinner. It was Ray, I, E, and her husband. And we're sitting around and she kind of broke the news that unfortunately she has stage 3 cancer. And all of a sudden, Ray speaks up. And he says, you got one shot at this. You got to go to a world-class facility to take care of this. So, the moral of that story is, when you take the time, and all you people, I can tell you're all kind, giving people. You all make a difference. Each and every one of you guys. So, understand that you're only one conversation away from changing your life, changing their life, and the ripple effect it has on other people's lives also. Please understand that. I'd like to thank you for your time this evening. Time is very, very precious to me, as I said. And God bless you all.